How do you deal with fools successfully? That's the topic. Welcome to Message on the Go. This is Pastor Samuel Obadari. I'm glad you're here today. The topic we're dealing with is how do you successfully deal with somebody acting foolishly? Now, this is the second video on this subject. In the first video, I shared with you 4 reasons why dealing with fools could be difficult. I also shared 6 reasons you have to be intentional when responding to someone acting foolishly. All right? In addition, we looked at the different variations of foolishness. I really encourage you to watch that video. It's the first part. Now it's time to talk about the practical wisdom of dealing with fools. On that other video, I shared with you that the book of Proverbs is the Bible's book of wisdom, and it tells us powerful, effective ways to successfully respond to a foolish person. And so that's what we're going to do or begin in this video. So let's get started. Okay, how do you deal successfully with a foolish person? Now, the first instruction the Bible gives us is what not to do when responding to a fool. Here it is. When dealing with a fool, do not answer him according to his folly. When you deal with somebody acting foolishly, do not respond to that person according to its folly. Let me share that with you in Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Wow. If you're going to successfully respond to a foolish person, God's wisdom says don't respond to him according to his folly. Now, what does that mean? It simply means this. Take the high road. Take the high road. One of the most common errors when responding to a fool or a person acting foolishly is to respond based on the fool's antics. This is a natural temptation, and most people fall for it. God says, don't. Take the high road instead. Now, just think about dealing with a foolish child or a foolish coworker, a friend, a customer service person, maybe a client, or even a foolish spouse. The first thing you have to keep in mind is what not to do. Don't respond to that person according to the antics the person is bringing, right? No matter what that person does, don't let yourself devolve into the same mannerism as the fool, although the antics may tempt you. Now, let me give you some example. Perhaps somebody throws some jabs at you, makes a caustic remark, uses some sharp, abrasive words. We know when people insult us, we can tell. And you feel like giving the same kind of words back. Don't do so. Take the high road. Perhaps a person raises his voice and you feel like doing the same thing. Don't do so. Take the high road. In other words, do not do emotional response to a fool's rampage or agitation. Resist the bait. Resist the bait. Don't descend low in your response. Now, you say, well, what if I do? In other words, what if I don't take the high road? What happens? Well, let me share with you what happens. We're taking a look again at that same scripture. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4. Read it again. It says, do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest or otherwise you also be like him. If you do not take the high road, you will also become like the fool. That's what happens. In other words, even if you are wise, if you are right, you would be drawn into foolishness and act foolishly like the fool. All right, so this word of wisdom tells you how to avoid that. Now, this is applicable whether it's in your personal relationship, in leadership, or even in public relations. This is applicable. Now, let me share with you a couple of benefits to this approach. The first one is self-protection and honor retention. Self-protection and honor retention. What do I mean? Taking the high road is the way to protect yourself from foolishness as well as retaining your personal honor and dignity in your family and in your personal relationships. Now, it doesn't matter how right you are. Whenever you come down to the level of a person acting in such a manner, two things happen to you. Number one, you make your own self susceptible to foolishness. And secondly, you degrade your own honor as a person. On that note, I'm going to share another scripture with you. All right. It's still in the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs has a lot of wisdom for us. Chapter 20, verse 3. This is what it says. It is honorable for a man to stop striving, since any fool can start a quarrel. What a powerful verse. It is honorable for a man to stop striving, since any fool can start a quarrel. This is what the scripture is saying. Any fool can start a quarrel, but it takes another fool to sustain that quarrel. All right. So when a foolish person starts what looks like it's going to become an argument, you have to take the high road. Otherwise, you expose yourself also to acting foolishly by furthering, by continuing what the fool has started. Secondly, when you are able to nip it in the bud, you're able to put a stop to it by a wise response, you gain honor. But when you follow suit, right, with the fool's antics, you lose your personal honor. And that's why the scripture says, any fool can start, a quarrel, but it's a honorable person that can stop striving. Protect yourself from foolishness, okay? Protect yourself from being drawn into foolishness. And secondly, protect your personal honor. It is honorable to be able to stop a foolish act by your response. Let me give you some examples. I don't know if you've seen parents arguing and fussing with their children, maybe on the TV or in real life. Now, let me tell you, parents, don't fall into arguments. Don't get into arguments and altercations with your children when they do foolish things, because you risk becoming like them, and you will certainly lose your respect as a parent. Instead, take the high road. Husbands, don't get into altercations with your wives, all right? Otherwise, you will act foolishly yourself, and you will lose your honor as a husband. Now, you probably may say, well, she's acting foolish, she's not listening, she's not reasoning, she's rude. How am I supposed to respond to that? The same thing. Take the high road. Now, if you don't, in the act of responding in kind, you are going to lose your respect as a husband. That's what the book of Proverbs is saying. Now, let me ask you a question. If you are that parent that argues with your child, how is it working? It doesn't. It doesn't. The more you argue with your child, the worse the situation and the relationship becomes, because the more you respond to the child according to his folly, the more you lose your own respect as a parent. Don't throw your respect and dignity to the wind in the process of responding to a fool, no matter who that person is. Because the less respect you have, the harder it gets to be in charge of the situation. So that is the first benefit of this approach, right? The second benefit is character protection and dignity retention, all right? Now, maybe you are a leader, an office manager, an employer, or a church leader, a ministry leader, or a person in authority. There are times you will need to handle someone acting foolishly. All right. It may be someone that doesn't follow instructions, someone that doesn't like to follow orders, someone rude, hard to reason with, somebody that just wants to have his or her own way. It could come in different forms. In dealing with such a person, there are two things you want to maintain. Number one, godliness in your own character. And secondly, dignity as a leader. In order to maintain both of those things, you have to take the high road when dealing with such a person. If you don't, you risk losing both of them. All right? This doesn't mean you're not going to respond. We will get to how later on. But if you're going to preserve your godliness and your leadership dignity, you have to take the high road when you are dealing with such a person. Now, I'm going to share another scripture with you on that note. It's 1 Timothy chapter 2, and we're going to read verse 1. This is Apostle Paul writing to Timothy, and this is what he says. Therefore, I exhort first of all that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men. The next verse says, for kings and all who are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and reverence. Now, this is Apostle Paul writing to a young Timothy who was a pastor, and he desires that prayers and intercessions be made for kings, that means rulers, and those who are in authority. That what? That they may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and reverence. The word used for reverence there is the same word for dignity. This simply means, as a leader, if you are going to preserve your godliness and your dignity, you have to lead a quiet and peaceable life. The moment you throw away your quietness in your composure and a peaceable life out of the window, your godly character goes out of the window. And you lose your honor as a leader. So you do not want to jeopardize godliness in your own personal character and respect as a leader. Vitally important. And because of that, you have to take the high road. That means leaders, bosses, don't get into arguments and altercation with your subordinates. Protect your godliness and protect your dignity. Take the high road. Now, at this point, I want to share what I call the fear factor. The fear factor. And one of the reasons people do immediate and emotional response to a foolish person is fear. For example, parents fear that if I don't respond to this child right now and let him know that I am not taking this behavior or attitude, he will do it again. The husband fears that if I don't respond to my wife right now and let her know that I can't take this behavior, she will do it again and again. And so we respond emotionally. Here is what typically happens. That response may work the first time, maybe even the second time, but after a few times, it loses its power. It becomes what is to be expected, and it doesn't have real effect anymore. The person acting foolishly begins to think that, well, I will rave, he will rave, or she will rave, we will both rave, and nothing will come out of it. And what happens? The behavior will continue and probably get worse, and you lose more respect as time goes on. There are better ways to handle it, but you must first take the high road. And so far, the two key scriptures you have to remember whenever you find yourself in a situation that you are tempted to respond to a fool in kind are Proverbs 26:4. Do not answer a fool according to his folly. Otherwise, you will risk becoming like him. That's the wisdom of God. And secondly, Proverbs 20, verse 3. It is honorable for a man to stop striving. You could put a woman there. You could put your name there. Okay. Since any fool can start a quarrel. These are key scriptures in responding to a fool. Now, what does not answering a fool according to his folly involve? In other words, if you don't answer a fool according to his folly, how then do you answer a fool? I'm sure this is a question on your mind at this moment. Well, I'm going to share with you 4 ways to respond to a fool and the examples that we find in the Bible. That's where I'm going to pick up in the next video. I hope so far you've been blessed with this, and I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Click the notification bell so you can be notified when new videos are uploaded. In the next video, like I said, I'm going to get into 4 ways to respond, not according to the fool's antics, but in a much better way. The Lord bless you. Hope to see you next time.